Too far. There we go. Time for the raffle.
Okay, we got a $25 and a $50 gift cards from, sorry about that, from Lockwood. Who didn't buy a ticket? I mean, I'm not pointing out. 054066.
Hey.
Last three digits, 074. All right, winner in the back.
More losers here. Anybody want one? Our presentation tonight is from Mr. Steve Palmer, and he's going to be talking about furniture and furniture design. Like a lot of us, he is a retired person, a former worked as a mechanical engineer, and has been custom making furniture and selling it for, I didn't ask how long, but for a long time. Come on up, welcome.
Good evening. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Steve Palmer, and I will be giving a presentation on furniture design using heirloom joinery techniques. I was here at last month's meeting, and you were talking about the survey results that you had just gotten, and 60%, the one that popped out for me was that 60% of the members that answered the survey anyway were interested in furniture. So what I'm hoping tonight is I can, for the more seasoned woodworkers here that are already building furniture of some sort, hopefully I have at least a nugget or two that maybe you can take away. For the people here that are newer to woodworking, my main goal tonight is to explain and show that it's really not that hard to move to a quality piece of furniture using heirloom joinery techniques. You know, a piece that you would build would be made to last. And I hope that that reaches a few voices here. So, those are a number of pictures of different pieces I have built. And this presentation is going to be based on, I give for 11 years now, I've given a furniture design workshop down at the Eureka Springs School of the Arts. And it's an arts campus, about half a dozen buildings and some little studios around the place. And over the course of that 5-day workshop, I bring information on joinery and table sizing, custom sizes, standard sizes, and I bring quality hardwoods. But I don't bring cookbook plans of a table, which is their objective for the week, is to build a table. So it always surprises me, and it's the encouragement I get to go back again next year, is seeing what all these people create. And these people, half have had woodworking experience, half haven't. Half the people typically haven't even touched a table saw and were kind of afraid of it. So obviously with safety as the priority for the week, everybody still is able to come up with just some beautiful pieces of furniture made using heirloom joinery techniques that'll last for generations. So my presentation tonight is going to be kind of a synopsis or a summary of the information that I provide over those 5 days. And also for the Guild Library, this is a compilation of material that each of the students gets for the class. Now, this one for the Guild has been supersized. I've added more information that should anybody be interested in some details, like more than just tables. What about desks? What about chairs? What are the sizes? Things like that. I have the information in here, and I'll be donating it to the library. And I'm told if it's not checked out in a month or two, it might not be kept, but so hopefully this comes to somebody's interest. I'm going to show just a few. It's really distorted. That's an actual nice chest of drawers. These are a few pieces I've made, and I'm going through them just to show that my approach to woodworking is to stay out of the wood's way. Wood is so naturally beautiful. It's a great medium to work with. And my approach is keep the lines simple, use heirloom joinery techniques. I love contrasting woods. If you haven't played with them, to my belief, the contrasting woods, a lighter one framed with a darker one, just really accents the entire look of the piece. Well, one of the guys I just had this workshop back in July, the one I do every year, and one of the guys, experienced woodworker, and I got a kick out of it. He came to me and he said, I kind of know my way around a table saw and all, but he said, and I've made some furniture, but everything I made is just gorilla ugly. So we talked a little bit about sizing, pleasing proportions, contrasting woods, things of that nature. So this is, again, things are appearing very narrow, but for that same chest of drawers, I talk about joinery. The casework is all mortise and tenon. The drawer is held together with dovetails, and you can see with contrasting woods just how even the subtle detail of opening the drawer, it gives you a pleasing visual effect. The ends are frame and panel construction. We'll talk a little bit about that. And the legs, I took this spalted maple and put a 1/4 inch wide inlay in there. And it surprised me, but it actually looked like marble, stone marble that was in there. And it was like, that was just a surprise, and a lucky one on my part. This is a coffee table. They wanted green and green construction, therefore the exposed tenons, tapered legs. This was the end of the board, just the end of the board looked so beautiful. It was like, jump on the advantage or take the present. I just cut a slit of wood and turn it up on end for an inlay that shows you the end of the boards. And it's just like the wood was telling me what to do, and it just kind of followed along, and to me it looked great. That was just a large coffee table. Shows it come in all sizes, and this was a matching piece. I know there's a lot of lathe turners out here. I kind of know my way around a table saw, but I am a hack at lathe work. I keep trying. I've taken classes, and I think I have it, and then it catches, and then it's like, all right, I'll try it some other day. This was a nice little table and bench, again, all mortise and tenon, dovetails hidden down on those lower arches. And last picture, and then we're moving on to the meat of the presentation, but a pulpit. Now, I don't get too much calls for making a pulpit for a church, but this one was kind of fun. The verticals, again, it's fun taking a challenge handed to you and then doing something with it. But it matched the architectural elements of this new church that they were getting the pulpit built for. It had those kind of proud ribbing on the vertical supports for the church. And again, part of the fun was I built it, I dry fit it, and then it's like, well, there's really no specs on a church pulpit. So how steady does that need to be? You know, like if he was one of those, fire and brimstone guys, and he's like, well, maybe I need to put like some counterweights on it. So I took it to him, and he kind of did a dry run, and he started getting wound up a little bit, but then he calmed down. So he was only like halfway to fire and brimstone, whatever that was. So I actually trimmed the front of it off a little bit so nobody would trip. And again, it's always an adventure, building custom furniture. And with that said, I do have a custom furniture design business, and I've been doing it semi-seriously for 10 years. Been retired for 6 now, so doing it more seriously. But when I say custom design business, it's me alone in the garage. So, it sounds grandiose, but it's just me in the garage. But I've developed now enough referral and repeat business that I can keep at a happy medium, just a happy rate. And what I'm finding is it always leads to an adventure of some sort, from working with the people to challenging your own skills to accomplish something you haven't done before, or some combination of things that you never tried. So if anybody's building furniture or thinking of it, it's a great adventure. All right, now to the meat and potatoes. Mortise and tenon joinery. There are a lot of joinery techniques out there, and there's, again, quite a few of them, and they've been around for, I'm probably not giving enough credit by saying hundreds of years, but probably much longer than that, but it's been around, and that's why antiques are still around, because they've been built with these time-honored joinery techniques. Mortise and tenon, for one person's opinion here, is probably the most important joinery technique that is used in furniture making. If you know how to execute an accurate mortise and tenon, you can build a lot of fine pieces of furniture. And joinery is really just the mechanical interlocking of 2 pieces of wood. Nowadays you go to a store and buy something, well, it might be hot melt glued together, and if you paid a little bit more for it, they might have added a couple screws with it. So I call that the glue it and screw it technology, because it's, you can get it home, you can kind of use it, it's just like, don't lean on it, keep the family away, and it's just part of the way society has been running lately. And people think IKEA, this is a pet peeve of mine, people think IKEA makes good furniture. They just use better screws than the other guy. But it is what it is. Particle board construction. IKEA does have some nice engineered fastener systems, but it is what it is. And nothing can beat the old world charm nor durability of a solid hardwood piece of furniture put together using joinery techniques. So the mortise and tenon on the left is what is used for any horizontal piece connecting with a vertical piece. Think of the casework on something. That's what it all is. On the right, I don't know how clear that is to see, but there's different versions of a mortise and tenon. I typically just use your standard mortise and tenon. It's basically a tab A and slot B, and really I haven't seen the need for anything more elaborate than that. This is one more page on mortise and tenon just to show the different types. Up at the very top left, there's a version where you make the tenon, which is the long part that goes in the pocket. Make it long enough to actually go all the way through the joining piece of wood. And you can then add wedges to the outside to wedge it out. You don't even need glue. You can do angles. The bottom right, again, I don't know if that's easy to see, but if you think of like a desk that has a drawer in it, all right, if you have a table, it's basically a wall, a flat front. Now, if you want to put a drawer in there, well, you need to make as much room as you can for the drawer, because that's the purpose you want. You don't want a skinny drawer that can't be used. So what was normally a vertical piece, you can turn horizontally and have two of them, and therefore you now have a gap in between for the drawer. So you're now faced with, again, horizontal piece connecting to a vertical piece. But in the bottom right, and they said this has a laser pointer, right there, the cross piece is horizontal. It has two small stub tenons. And in the mating piece, it's two small mortises. So you can get two mortise and tenon connection into the adjoining piece and still end up with a pretty strong joint. Now, you could put a Craig screw behind it and call it a day, but you know that's not going to last. This will. Bottom left is, or bottom middle, is what I use. It's called a floating tenon or a loose tenon. And I've developed the machinery, the equipment and technique to accurately put a mortise in pieces. And I can do it. I have a multi-router. It's made by a US company. It's basically a XYZ CNC machine, only it's mechanically controlled. And it can just, once set up, just create pocket after pocket after pocket. So I use, and that's a technique anybody could do, is they could build their own fixture and make mortises and then come up with a tenon. Make a bag of tenons and you can really execute some well-designed mortise and tenon joints without all that big of a deal. So this is a schematic of a table using mortise and tenon construction. And I mean, if you back, I guess I'm speaking, again, when I'm talking to the class, it's a lot of beginners, and I'm speaking, I think, more so to the people newer to woodworking. But a table, if you really back away from it, is nothing but a top with four legs under it. And the legs are always typically connected by four horizontal pieces, and they are called the aprons. So, getting back to that mortise and tenon piece of joinery, if you were able to accurately, repeatedly be able to execute a mortise and tenon joint, you could make a table by applying that to all the pieces and have something that is just structurally sound. It's not screwed together, nailed together, Craig screwed together, and it's really a quality piece of furniture. So my point being is that to step into furniture, all it really takes is for your shop, depending on the space, the budget you have, the equipment you already own, if any, is to come up with a way to make a good mortise and tenon joint. And if you can do that, the whole world of furniture opens up to you. Because if you think about it, what's the difference between an end table or a coffee table or a sofa table or an entryway table or a nightstand? It's just the size of the parts. So heirloom joinery technique furniture can be made by being able to execute a quality mortise and tenon joint. And Rockler and Woodcraft would love to sell you dozens of different ways to do it. Most of them are based around either a table saw or a router. I'm sure you've looked, you've seen them. For the class, I even made a fixture because I couldn't haul any of my equipment down there. And there's things on YouTube where you could make a fixture where you could clamp your standard 3/4 inch thick board into it. It's set up for a router. It has a little guide opening, and you can just accurately route those mortises all day. And you can set it up. You could do it for your legs and aprons. And if you wanted the do-it-yourself approach, it's very approachable by taking those means. And this is really top view, just another view, but it shows on that upper left view there how the mortises come into each side of the leg, they intersect. You got a lot of engagement in there, again, combined with the glue to hold that table together very sturdily. All right, well, I said, you know, difference between tables is just different sizes. So like if you were to run home tomorrow and start getting out wood and do a mortise and tenon, they go, well, what size do I need to make things? You know, like if you want an end table or a coffee table, well, what size does it need, does it need to be? Well, all that information is available. There are standard sizes. Again, in this binder, I have this information plus a lot more for the 3 critical dimensions: height, width, and length. And every piece of furniture falls within a certain range. And it's, the human ergonomics. We vary some, but typically all coffee tables are about 17, 18 inches tall. And if you have the information available at your fingertips, it's just a matter of looking it up. Somebody comes to you, or you have the need to build a dining table that sits 6 people. It's like, oh wow, how big does that need to be? Well, that information's all out there. And the information in this binder I didn't create. If you Google, you can get a million hits on anything, joinery included. What I have done is spend a lot of time going through a lot of it and coming up with what I view as descriptive, very succinct, clear illustrations. And as far as furniture sizing, nice condensed information on everything from tables to desks to chest of drawers, you name it. Bookshelves. Again, you make a bookshelf, how wide should the shelves be? Those specs are already out there. You don't have to build one and then see if it sags too much. It's just really a matter of having the information here, which again, should be in the library. So standard sizing for end tables vary a little bit because usually it's going to accompany either a chair or a couch in somebody's home. So a lot of times the styles of couches vary quite a bit. So the height of an end table for for your living room against a couch, that can change quite a bit. So, but again, the under desk knee room for under a table, it's all standard information. And here is one of the pages that's in here, but the height, length, and depth of a table pretty much defines what it's called. If it's low and kind of 2 foot by 4 foot, well, it's a coffee table. If it's 2 foot tall and kind of 12 by 12 maybe, well, that's kind of an end table or nightstand. If it's tall but real narrow, like 12 inches, that's an entryway table, because usually there's a little niche in the hallway, you put the table in, and so that governs the size. So it's all available, and again, armed with your knowledge of mortise and tenon construction, you are now turned loose to make an entire class of furniture. Work with some contrasting woods, add some taper to the legs. You could even put a shelf in the bottom, haven't gone too far off track. And again, it's a whole range of furniture using heirloom joinery techniques with the knowledge of just one joint. So, more information. This was kind of interesting. It was like on children's. They have their own ergonomic requirements. But okay, I was just talking about standard sizes. All right, well, what if now somebody comes to you, or you want to build something that you looked up the standard sizes that I gave you, and it's like, this should work, right? Well, what if you, where you actually want to put it, what if you don't have room for it? What if it needs to be narrower, or if you want it, but you want it longer? Well, there are certain, you can just make it that way and see what it looks like. Or there are guidelines on custom sizing where you can, ahead of time, determine if you're going to end up with pleasing proportions. And it's really pretty easy to do. Or actually, it's a ratio. It's a single number. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it. Well, I'm sure many people have heard of it, but it's called either the golden ratio or the golden mean. And it's a number it's 1.61 something. What was it? 1.618? All right. 1.618 what? Anybody know more? So I'm going to rattle off 10 of them. But what it is if you have a dimension and you want to find a pleasing proportion, like say you have something that's going to be 3 inches tall, like a drawer front. Okay, what size drawer would look good for that 3-inch height? Well, if you use the ratio, 3 times 1.6, that's easy, 4.8. So 3 by 5 would be a pleasing proportion for a drawer. And you know, the old, I use that example because, you know, the old recipe card, why was that always just the perfect size? You know, it was a 3 by 5 card. And it's like, oh, it works. And I could talk quite a while, or you could read quite a bit, which I have. It's fascinating. But they've been able to identify this ratio throughout the solar system, throughout the body, the ratio of joint lengths of one to the other. And it's been proven that hundreds of years ago, for like the English highboy, you know, those drawer heights are different heights. And the one at the very top, that's different heights also. Now, if you have that much height to fill with drawers and you make them all the same size, it looks like a piece of factory furniture, because factories like to build things that are the same size and not have different parts. To optimize the look, you would make the drawers, the lower drawer would be, pick a dimension, the next drawer up would be that dimension divided by 1.6, so the number got smaller. And so you would keep doing that ratio and coming up with these different drawer fronts that would have a pleasing look. So for custom sizing and design in general, that golden ratio is a very useful technique. And a follow-up on the golden ratio is towards the bottom there, like if you're designing a table, and now we're getting down into the details of it, it's like how wide of an apron should I have? How much overhang? That's a big thing, because it really drives the look of a table. You can use the golden ratio for that. If you think about it, you look at the corner of a table or any piece of furniture, you're faced with the width of the leg, the width of the apron, the thickness of the top, and the overhang. So there's a couple different ways to do it suggested in here if you care to look, but you can go like a 1, 2, 3, 4 approach to it. Gives this pleasing step up in sizes. Or again, apply the golden rule. You know, you have say an 1.5 inch leg, and multiply that by 1.618, was it? And that could then determine the overhang, or you can divide it and get a short one depending on the style you're going for. But it gives you something to shoot for. On furniture, and again, excuse me for all the knowledgeable woodworkers here, but for those that, again, are a little newer to woodworking, the thing very unique about wood is that it moves. When you build something, if you build something of metal, you can just screw it together. wood throughout, it's still alive basically, and it's subject to moisture content, but the top of a table over its life will get wider and narrower depending upon the seasonal exposure to moisture that it's seeing. So on any piece of furniture, and I learned this the hard way when I was just beginning to play with all this, is I did the worst of the worst things I could do. I made a table for outside, and I made a table, I believe I did use mortise and tenon, thinking, all right, I got it licked. But then to put the top on there, I actually took the tops of the table legs and turned a little round on them, and then I put the same rounds on the top and basically pegged it in place. That thing didn't last but half a year before the sun and the rain just pulled it apart. So wood moves considerably to the point where you have to deal with it when applying a top to the base. At the very bottom right is one technique that you can use for attaching a top to a table. Those are called carpenter's buttons, is one term I know for them. You can also get S-shaped metal ones from Rockler or Woodcraft. And what it is the table isn't actually attached directly to the top. It's just held in place with these fingers that reach into a slot on the apron. And it holds the top down, but lets it float in and out of the slot. So you then now have a top that's mounted to the base. It's not going to fall off, yet it has freedom to move. So that's probably the other critical element on a basic piece of furniture, is make sure you're accounting for all the wood movement. They even go to the details in the middle there. If you have like a kitchen style, country kitchen style table, and they have these, usually the aprons on are like 6-inch wide or something very big, is if you did mortise and tenon, you actually don't want to glue the whole tenon inside the joint, because it's just too much wood and it's going to move inside the joint too. So that's why they recommend you can get a little elaborate and do a few pins and slot, or just glue the top half. And it's better to have that attached and the freedom to move than to try to glue the whole thing, make it stronger, and have the joint fail permanently. All right, that was all on the mortise and tenon. Again, there's a lot of joinery out there. I'm not going to belabor each one to that degree, but the second, and I'm going to say the second most important piece of joinery are dovetails. And again, you can cut them by hand. You can buy some very expensive fixtures that do great work with it. But again, mortise and tenons are used for, you see most of the wood is created, it's flat on flat connected at a corner. And it's very useful for drawers. It's a very strong joint because the dovetail, which takes its name from the shape of a dove's tail, it's wedged outward. It's wedged in between the fingers so that it can't come apart. You can pull on that drawer all day with no glue in it, and it still wouldn't come apart. So it's very useful if you want to take your table and add a drawer to it, which is just another half step up towards, you know, a full cabinet, chest of drawers. And the dovetail could also be used for the casework itself. If you think about it, if you made a box, four-sided box, and turned it vertically and put a bottom in it, now you've got a chest, and the dovetails are running up the four corners. So dovetails can be used for casework, drawers, and again, if mortise and tenon first, if you haven't heard it yet, but dovetails are, again, a great technique in joinery to learn and accomplish if you want to make furniture. And that chest in the middle there, the old like cedar chests, heirloom chests that are just, again, still around. They're made of cedar. It's not the hardest of woods. They typically have dovetails on the corner. but all the wood is running, the grain is running in a continuous direction around the piece. So the wood is moving across the width of itself, but all four sides are doing the same thing. So there's nothing fighting with any adjacent piece. If you had the front piece running long ways and the side piece running horizontally, now you've got a problem, because the front piece is going to continue to move whether you don't want it to or not. And when it shrinks, it's actually going to pull itself apart because the vertical side is not moving in the same direction, or moving at all, basically. So another use for the dovetails. And this is if you go from a table, which again is a multitude of different styles and types and pieces that you can make. If you want to add a drawer to it, does add a little bit of complexity. Nowadays, I used to make drawers with handmade quarter sawn oak drawer guides. Really, it was the conventional way to do it. Most people, though, when I make a piece, I do mention, would you like the soft close feature? And they go, oh yeah. And that means you buy a mechanical metal drawer guides. I use Blum, B-L-U-M. It makes some really fine product. But that's where you get the soft close feature. They're metal, ball bearing design, have the soft close feature built in. But I'm still kind of a stickler. I like to make the old handmade wood drawer guides. They work flawlessly. They only get smoother with age, but they don't have a soft close. So that's been my exposure. And I just added more information is available, because what's a table with a drawer in the front of it? A desk, you know? So there are dimensions, specifications, already sizing information available out there. So if you want to take that, you want to make a desk, this is how much room it's in there that you need to leave for your knees, and various other details. And again, children's desks come with their own set of requirements just because the child's smaller. But again, there's just columns and columns of information for you to start with, not wonder what you need to do. And this book, and I actually saw it back in the library. I don't hardly own any woodworking books, but this is the one that if I recommend any, it's this. It has, I'll bet you, 100 different types and styles of furniture, all built using just excellent joinery techniques. And it shows you how to, for a particular piece, just like that, 2 cabinet doors at the bottom and drawers up high. How would you put that together? That book will give you an exploded view showing the suggested joinery, that how you should approach the piece. So if you start working into a more complex piece, this is a furniture design Bible as far as I'm concerned. I go and look it up a lot, and at least gets me in the ballpark of what I want to do or how I want to approach it. And then there's some things that are different, and you just adjust accordingly. But that book, there's one in the library, and I think it's soft copy. I think it's about 20 bucks. I've got one at home. So that's in here in case you want to reference the name of it just to get the book. All right, now here's a few more descriptions of joinery, and I'm looking at my time. I'm going to kind of breeze through here just a little bit. Again, for those of you familiar with joinery, great. Those not, just to be aware that there are a lot of different ways to join 2 pieces of wood. The first one, top left, is a often used one too, like if you're making bookcases and you have shelves. Well, if you use those little pins to make them adjustable, they work. If you want a very solid structural piece, you would actually take the shelf and dado it into the side. I mean, it's sitting on a ledge. It can't ever drop. So there's advantages and uses for all these different types of joinery. Lap joints, kind of like a hand-on-hand. You're relying there totally on the glue, but by making it a larger area, you at least have more glue contact. But that's just glue on glue, but there's places to use it. Pretty pictures. You ever seen any Japanese joinery? Boy, they've done some elaborate puzzle making. I look at those things and just marvel. You know, they were on that island way too long by themselves. they had way too much time. This is more straightforward. The bottom left, that's a handy one to know about. You have a piece joining another one in the middle. Again, without throwing two Craig screws at it, you could do mortise and tenon there, but that's kind of a nice one. Plus, it gives you a very pretty visual effect if you want to actually expose it. More, again, some of these, the ones on the left could be used like if you're going to make small drawers. You don't really have room for dovetails, but there are certain joints that really have kind of a finger locking means of attaching one wood to the other, or one piece of wood to the other. And I've used them actually then for a little, like for jewelry cases. You're making some little drawers. These are kind of mostly a table saw operation anyway, so you can kind of zip, zip, zip and get them together. And it's strong, and it still has a really good visual impact when somebody opens that little drawer and sees that in the corner. They know you didn't just nail it together. And I think I'm about done with joinery, although there's a lot out there. Everybody's seen, made, or used a picture frame. Those corners, when you, 45 is called a miter. If all you do is glue it together, it's not a strong joint because all wood has wood fibers and this capillary action that you clamp it together, and before the glue really gets a chance to set, the wood is drawing the glue out of the joint. So you always end up with a relatively weak joint. Cheap frames, they'll go ahead and push in those S squiggly shaped pieces of reinforcing metal from the back. If you want to make a good solid hardwood miter connection, be it like a box, two ends coming together, or flat like a frame, this splined mortise is a great way to add strength and a nice little visual element up there too. But you make the 45, you actually glue it together, and then you come back and you machine through it so that you can then insert a piece of wood running long ways to the joint and glue that in place, and now you have a piece of wood that is connecting both pieces, kind of mechanically interlocking it all on its own, plus it has a lot of glue surface so that you have a strong connection. Without it, you don't want to drop it because it would not be that strong. All right, this is just about the end of it, but these are the pictures that I'm most proud of, actually. These are pictures of what the students to my different classes have made after 5 days. And again, some of them, half of them really never had any woodworking experience. And again, we focus on safety, buddy system at the saw. They don't turn the power on till like me or the shop monitor is standing there. But they designed and built this themselves because all I gave them was information and wood. And so this one, I'm not quite sure how she sanded that, but it looks great. Totally ergonomic. This person went with the live edge. They actually took a metalworking class, made the base, and then came back and put the top on it using the woodworking class. You can see that some of the slots aren't quite in place. For this woodworking class, we have Monday through Friday, but Thursday after class, which we're not done yet, they always had a studio stroll. where everybody, all the other students, all the other classes, and then some people that were supportive of the college would come and tour your project. So Thursday evening, we had to have things standing. And then we still had Friday to finish it up. So that's why some of these, you'll see a little blue tape here, a paper cup there. It's like they were just not quite close enough to have it standing on its own. But this guy wanted a hamper for basically outside. He had cushions for his chairs. So he, by the end of the week, he had never been given a nickname in his whole life. But he left that week with the name Slats. And it just matched his, it was, I don't know, his name was McGee. It was like Slats McGee. I mean, it was like, you know, kind of guy you wouldn't want to bump into in a dark alley, you know. So he was kind of happy with his nickname. This was, as you can see, the paper cups on the corners. This is going to be a floating top. It's the same 4 legs joined with 4 aprons, but instead of the top setting directly on the base, you can put intermediate members that run between the aprons, and these stick up an inch or so above the height of the base, gives you this raised floating top look, yet it's all tied together. And that's what he was going for and had done by Friday. You'll see quite a few tables here with shelves. And this was one year when on Monday, somebody asked, can I put a shelf in my table? And I, well, yeah, sure. So everybody else goes, well, can I too? And it's like, that year I used up a lot of wood. Everybody had a shelf. But you can see different approaches to mounting the shelf. The far left had some big, thick aprons under it. They'll probably want to lighten that up a bit with some arches under it. In the middle is pretty much the same thing. Some of them, you can use dowel construction and just float the shelf down there. Use the legs with a dowel that runs into the shelf and into the legs at all 4 corners. Pretty quick addition. And again, 5 days is not a lot of time to do a lot. This, I think, is great. Very clean, very simple. Look how they married the sapwood edges of 2 boards in the middle. Beautiful effect. And again, it's a top and 4 legs. Those legs, by the way, because they're so long, we added a taper. And again, it's still part at your table level, making tables, is these are the options. A tapering fixture of some sort, and it really cleans up and slims down the look of a blocky square leg hitting the floor. And you can build some beautiful things. This was a bigger guy, I remember. He had shoulders on him like this. He built this top, and he was just so thrilled with this triangular shape, he started sanding it. And he kept sanding and sanding, and I'd go off, tend to something, come back, he's still sanding. I said, you know, you probably sanded that enough. And, oh, I'm almost done, almost done. Couldn't get the sander out of his hands, but he was just so in love with the shape he picked and the combinations of woods. And he went home and he sent me a picture of the finished piece shortly thereafter. He was very proud of what he did, and I think it's very, very pretty. And he actually got very inventive. There's 3 legs. The rear 2 legs are joined with an apron, mortise and tenon on each end. The front leg, the top of the triangle, has a single mortise and tenon that runs a single piece that kind of goes into a T along the back apron. And it's a pretty, structurally, it was a pretty strong little thing. And again, mortise and tenon, heard it here first. That was one that was just kind of roundish all over. I don't want to denigrate it, but the person's not here, but you know, some things work, some don't. This is another floating table. He got pretty far with it. If you notice, the sides are 2 legs and an apron. He took the front and back aprons and moved them inboard of the legs. And it's like, I think it was his idea. It was like, wow, that's pretty clever. And your attachment of those long aprons into the side, not really room for a mortise and tenon. We doweled it, which is a legitimate joinery technique if you're forced into a corner with it. There's other ways given more time, but that worked fairly well. And this was just a nice clean piece. Contrasting woods. Oh, and that golden mean, golden rule thing I'd mentioned earlier, 1.618. The widths of those, the centerpiece and then the two neighboring pieces versus the overall, he used that ratio to determine those different widths and gave a very pleasing look. A nice little end table, and this is the last table. They put it in their cabin lodge. But the thing I wanted to point out is the ends, again, same basic construction, but they put a arch, an inward arch on the ends and really dramatically gave it a look. And it's all with a top and 4 legs. So, that's all I have. Were there any questions?
How do you come up with the different ideas for the different types of designs for this? Is there some kind of, do you look through different books, different techniques, different, like the Japanese, how they made certain things? I mean, I'm trying to determine how you really came up with the different ideas here.
Okay, when I started doing custom furniture, I took the wrong approach. I went and at home designed a few what I thought were beautiful, unique tables, and then took them out and tried to sell them. And it was always pretty, lots of oohs and ahs, but it's not the right size, or it's not the right wood, or it doesn't match the style. And I had very little luck just sitting in my own little world creating pieces. So I went the other way around. I started, if you notice, I'm a juried artist with Best of Missouri Hands. They have a website that's well maintained with people who know what they're doing, so that when somebody searches for a custom table, they pop up. I don't know how it works, but they pop up in there. And because I'm a juried artist on their for this Best of Missouri Hands, I get a web page, and I have it loaded with all my pictures. And I get a lot of inquiries through them, and at this point, a lot of repeat and referral. So to answer your question, is people come to me with something they already want. Now, a lot of times they come with a picture, and there might be just a couple elements in it that they really like, but they want it different size and all. So you just kind of help them with the size a little bit, so they don't end up with something that looks like a bench that belongs in a locker room, But a lot of the styling, the core style, I'm approached with, and that typically, if not always, challenges me to do something different. The church pulpit. A lot of these other pieces sometimes combine in an unusual way joinery to best accomplish it. So really, way it's working for me anyway, is have them bring the idea to you. And then you get to work on something new, and you're going to build them something that they want. So that's where, if you look at the website, there's like 60, 70 different pictures of furniture. I can't say I ever really designed any one of them. I mean, I certainly helped and suggested along the way, but it's what they wanted, and I just built it for them. Thank you. Yes?
What kind of finishes do you use?
Okay, question was what kind of finishes do I use? That's probably my weakest area. When I find something that works, though, I stick with it and try not to vary. I've used a couple of different things, but my standard finishing technique is sand, starting with 60 grit. Now I have a nice planer and joiner with the Shelix shear cutting head, so it leaves a pretty good looking surface. But I've gotten burned many a time trying to, if somebody wants it stained, which I don't like doing, but if they want it stained, it brings out the machine marks, even if you sand it and it looks smooth. It's the compression from the blade that actually compressed the fibers. And even though you sanded it smooth, it absorbed stain unevenly relative to adjacent. So I sand starting with 60 grit, it levels it and gets it done quick so you don't have to bear down anywhere. And then go 100, 150, 220. Then I typically always use a Zinsser seal coat. Adds a little amber to it, a little richness. It things like cherry and maple, it helps you a lot with splotching or the possibility of splotching. And depending on if you've used stain before the seal coat, it adheres to the stain, and then your top coat adheres to it, as compared to trying to just shoot your top coat straight on top of a stained surface. And for the top coat, I've used a couple things, but again, I just try to find something that works. And General Finishes, they're satin, the General Finishes line, the water-based line. I work out of the house, so I'm not allowed to have anything that's stinky in the garage. So 2-3 coats, 400 grit, 600 grit screen in between, and I use an HVLP gun. Bought a nice, had a nice one. Kind of wore out some seals in it, so I decided to just buy a nicer one instead of rebuilding this one. So I got an automotive grade HVLP gun, so it's it's worth every penny. Okay, going. Anybody else? All right. Well, oh. Thank you.
I think that's it, guys. Thanks for coming.